I'm sitting here thinking of the people that have done that for me. Like I think sometimes we as parents beat ourselves up so much about like you said, like the number of times you're like, ugh, I missed it. I'm messing this up. And I wonder if we flip that on its head and actually think of like the number of times we've experienced it, because you can't give something you've never experienced. Like you've never received it. How would you know to give it?
You are listening to the Famous at Home podcast with Dr. Josh and Christy Straub.
Because when it's all said and done, we all want to know that we were famous at home. Welcome back to the Famous at Home podcast. Today we are continuing our series on words that matter. Christy, I'm so excited today to continue the series. Last week we talked about safety. Today we're talking about a word called
Attunement.
Attunement. And attunement is probably not a word that many of us have heard of, but so you're like, wait a minute, we're talking about words that matter for our family.
And we've started with two that like people don't really
probably really think about. We're going to get into some other fun ones, but I genuinely believe this is the foundation of family. Like this is really where we feel connected.
Okay, so let's talk about it.
Well, before we do, here's what I want to do. Okay. I want to do two things. First of all, I want to remind everybody it is Christmas season coming up. Yeah. We wrote a book called 25 Days of the Christmas Story, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind me. 25 Days of the Christmas Story. It is an Advent experience for families. We take you through an experience through 25 days leading up to Christmas. There's just all kinds of prayers and dinner time questions and activities that you can do with your family as we tell the actual story of Christmas for your kids. Beautiful book that you can just kind of pick and choose which one you want each day. You don't have to do every day. There's no pressure to do every day, but you can just it's just a fun devotional for families. And it's cool
because you can make it like a memory book. So there's places in the back where you can actually write like what your kids said and did when you're doing the family activities, and make it like every year you open the book back up again, and you can like reflect over these years of your family's memories. But I know how significant it's been for our family. And so I do pray and hope that it is for yours as well.
We mentioned it at the end of last week's episode, have a program coming up called My Kids EQ. And we are launching an ambassador coaching program. It'll be 8 weeks long. And you will get a part of the My Kids EQ curriculum as a part of signing up for that first coaching program. We are looking for ambassadors, people who want to jump on the train early to learn everything that we have learned about emotional intelligence in kids based in a scriptural truth. And so whether you're a school, whether you're a church, whether you are a parent, if you want to jump in on this thing, we would love for you to check it out. You can see it in the show notes, mykidseq.com, to sign up. We will begin that program in January of 2023, but we're already starting to get the registrations rolling and getting that program up and running, and we're super excited about it. It's been a long time coming, getting this thing off the ground, and we're really, really excited about it. So now...
And just to say, like, if that's EQ is emotional intelligence. So this is probably, like, we've been working on this for years, truly years.
It's been awesome.
And it's been cool because I've been able to teach my own kids through the program now, because we're designing it not only to be used in schools, but also for parents. So if you homeschool, or if you just want to add this in for your kids, because you realize like it's the things that kids need but aren't taught in school.
Also, we've mentioned this in the past, but if you're a new listener, we piloted this program at a school in Nashville last year. And so we have, we're in the process now of beta testing it in homes and in schools and churches and everywhere else. And so it is an emotional intelligence program unlike any others because it's grounded in scripture and biblical truth. And so we just would love for you to check that out if that is up your alley. If you're a parent who's like, oh yes, this is something that I really want to be a part of and I want to join, make sure you take a look at that. Now that you are attuned to what's happening in the world of Famous at Home, we want to get you attuned to why this word is so important for your family.
That was a great intro.
Did you like that?
Yeah. So, and Josh, in your terms, how would you define attunement?
So attunement, this is my words, and maybe it's somebody else's too, but I don't know if it is somebody else's.
Isn't that just mean you forgot where you got it from?
Originality is forgetting where you got it from.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Ba-dum,
attunement,
ching.
my definition of attunement would be when someone is attuned to me, it means I felt seen. It's when someone sees you. And I think, so Dr. Dan Siegel, he describes it as feeling felt. Like you feel felt. I like to describe it as I feel seen. And however you want to use those two phrases, attunement really comes out of the area of attachment, as we talk about like, counseling and that type of thing. It comes out of John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth, and attachment, and the realization that attunement is so significant for a secure attachment in life. And so last week we started with safety as being a big word that families need to understand and words that matter for your family. Attunement is honestly maybe should have what come first because it's what leads to safety. When you're genuinely attuned to someone else in your family, it's what leads to safety. And I think before we even get into this and you're kind of like, oh man, I just feel like I'm missing it. There's so often we do. And busyness is the reason I think I tend to miss it, is because these are the moments where your kids are saying, and again, there's the everyday moments and then there's the big moments. You don't want to miss the big moments, like where it's like you're fishing or you're driving down the road and all of a sudden one of your kids says, hey, Mom, Dad, I got something I really need to share. You also don't want to not be attuned when, they're lying in bed and all of a sudden it's kind of like, Mom, Dad, I really got something to share that happened to me today. And you're like, it's bedtime. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning. Like, that's not attunement. Attunement is to sit down on the edge of the bed and say, oh, what's happening? Like, tell me about it. It's feeling seen. Another way to do that, and this is one of the ways that I have felt seen in the past couple of weeks. Another way to do that is to, and again, it can be in everyday moments. It doesn't have to just be these big moments. It can be in everyday moments as well, where it's kind of like, the Phillies have just got out of the World Series. They lost, which I'm okay with because we made it that far, and I was really grateful we made it that far, and next year we'll win it. So we're going to be there again next year. But Christy, I felt seen because you cared. There was no like, oh, we're watching a baseball game again, which, by the way, baseball that many nights in a row that late was, I was glad for it to be over.
Yeah.
But it's like, you saw me, you saw that it meant something to me to watch it, especially because there was a connection between, that's how my dad and I were attuned to one another, was through sports. And so it just, it continued that. And so I'll just say one other thing. So in the day to day, it's your kids saying, Daddy, look at this. Mommy, look at this.
Yeah.
Hey, look at me, see me. Now, granted, you can't see every little thing, or you'll go crazy because you won't pay attention to, and you won't be attuned to anything else going on. Your finances will take a hit. Your job will take a hit. Your cooking will take a hit. I mean, everything. It's like you can't just be in their world all day, every day, completely attuned. But attunement isn't about every single moment. Attunement is, do my kids, does my spouse really know that I have their heart?
I'm sitting here thinking of the people that have done that for me. Like I think sometimes we as parents beat ourselves up so much about like you said, like the number of times you're like, ugh, I missed it. I'm messing this up. And I wonder if we flip that on its head and actually think of like the number of times we've experienced it. Because you can't give something you've never experienced. Like you've never received it. How would you know to give it? And so to have that loving compassion on yourself, to actually reflect, like, when is the last time I felt someone truly attuned to me? Which I keep hearing it's like to tune into someone. Like, we talk about presence a lot, but like to actually be present, fully present with someone. But I just wonder how many of us have had experiences like that, and how often. It's maybe not that. I think especially as adults, that's not something we're given much, because we're all just, it's almost like we're just passersby in each other's lives. Like we're not really invested. And it's interesting because I'm thinking of this for myself. And just yesterday, I spent 2 chunks of time with friends, which is not common for me. Like we just have really full days. And so to actually get to spend time with friends was so significant. And these are 2 of my closest friends. And it was like such intentional, focused conversation for hours. And
Which is why I wasn't there.
Yes. Because you were home taking care of the kids so that I could have that time. Bless you, by the way. And I got my gray hairs covered in the meantime. And it was just, but like, it's funny because I left feeling, you know, that term where people are like, oh, my heart was so full. Like, but like genuinely, I just felt full, like filled up. And that also tired. Like I was super, it was like I'd given everything into those conversations because they were so deep and so rich. And we were just like in it with each other, where you are having to do the work of holding that space for someone to just, and you're with them, like you're truly connected to them. And so I say that to reflect on even what that feels like for me. It filled me up, but it also does cost you. Like it takes something from you because it does require energy, like, and in a real focus to do it.
Truly what attunement is it's you reactively turning your attention away from whatever it is that you already had your attention on to be with that person. And as a parent, when you got all these kinds of things going on, that is very difficult to do. And so when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about some practical ways that we can begin to become more attuned to our loved ones. So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we become attuned to our loved ones. I
think do it in a way that you don't feel guilty all the time for not, because you do have, obviously we all have like very realistic obligations that we have to do. And it's not this, because that can, I just feel like as a mom, like that feels like a heavy burden when
and for me, and being honest too, like there are times where I think this is the first one. I think this is the first practical takeaway of, am I really being attuned to my spouse and to my kids? And I think the first question to ask is, which family member, be it spouse or a particular child, do I feel currently most disconnected from? And it might be that you feel disconnected, or you might even flip the question to look into the heart of maybe your children or your spouse and say, do they genuinely believe that I'm interested in their hearts?
Wow.
Do they feel connected to me? Which person might not feel as connected to me as they hope? And I think it starts there and I'm only saying that from my standpoint as a dad and as a husband. When I feel the disconnect, it requires my ability to be able to pay attention to when I'm feeling disconnected from one of my children or from Christy, because if I'm feeling it, there's a good likelihood they're probably feeling it too. And you know, it's fascinating because this happened today. So Landon, he's our oldest. He's our 10-year-old. And it happened twice today. This happens multiple times, by the way, throughout a week. It happened twice today already. And it happened yesterday multiple times, where I'm with him in the house and he and I are alone in the house at some level, whether we're upstairs or downstairs. And all of a sudden, I'll just hear him call out and say, Dad? And I'll be like, yeah, buddy. He's like, okay, I just wanted to make sure you were there. And I think that, he's like, it just got quiet. You know, I just wanted to make sure you were there. That sense of feeling safe and being attuned to your surroundings is really, really crucial. And for me, I pay attention to that. That's what I do. I try to pay attention. If I'm feeling disconnected from a child, and it usually is because I'm working too much or I have too much. It's not even that I'm working too much. It's that my brain is consumed by work, or that adult things
Yeah.
that I haven't entered in and just played
Yeah.
with the kids.
And I think those are the things that, like, even though you're present with them, like you're at dinner or breakfast or whatever, you're helping them get ready, you're doing schoolwork with them. But it's like, when your mind is pulled elsewhere, and they're very perceptive of that and aware as well. And I think that's Kennedy, our daughter, she's 8. Talk about, like, she is so aware. And I think, maybe you have a kid like that, where it's just the one that's so socially aware of distance or disconnection. And it was one thing is we really learned to teach her, was to be able to put words to that, because she would feel it and it would come out in her behavior. Like, she would be sullen. Like yesterday, Josh, like, she was ignoring him. Like, he was asking her questions and she wasn't even responding. And it's this, what is going on? And we've come to realize this is how she responds when she doesn't feel connected to. And at the bottom of it, when we actually sit with her and like, well, honey, what is going on? Can you talk to me? And it's, I don't feel, Mommy, I miss you. And I wish I had spent time with you. And they'd gone to their tutorial, and so they'd been gone to school. And then I was with friends yesterday. And so, which is, again, a rare day for me and for them. And clearly she felt it. And it was this, like, I just miss you. And so it comes out in misbehavior. But I think so often that's just to get our attention. Like, okay, well, you weren't giving me attention. So now if I act out, at least you'll discipline me and attend to me that way. But I have had to teach her specifically how to say what she needs, like to actually just come to me and say, Mommy, I need you. I miss you. I'd love to spend time with you. And that cue to me, like, I have sort of made that commitment with her. It's like, if I've missed it and I've been too busy and I have not been attuned to you, and you are feeling that distance between us, and you come to me and say, because I think that's really powerful, to give our kids the tools and the language to just say, I need you. I need your presence. I need your attention. Because the way the world will tell you to do it is it comes out sideways with addiction and misbehavior. And they go after, like, binge watching TV and video games and looking for that attention elsewhere, versus to just be able to speak what they need, which is the basis to form really healthy relationships. Like, that's what I pray for her, for friendships and for her marriage. Like, she can just say to her husband, like, I miss you. I need you to pay attention to me. Like, I need you to listen to me right now. It's not that complicated, but I don't think until we actually are told that that's okay to express, we often resort to, like, we act out, or we get moody and we get short tempered, and we don't even realize we're communicating, like, we're pushing people away, trying to get them to love us.
I made her sign a contract this week that she can't date till she's 35. So we're not going to have to worry about what her issues are with her husband for a while anyway. So that's good.
Josh, you do not want her living in our basement. Like, we don't even have a basement, but
That's
until
true.
she's 35.
Tennessee doesn't have basements.
We want her to be happy and whole,
Right.
but to be able to express what she needs. And so but can I just add this though too? My part of the commitment is, like, when you've said to me that, you need time with me, I need to then commit, like, yes, I will, because you've expressed a need to me. And now I have to show you that I am willing and able to meet it. Because I think one of the biggest wounds is that, like, I'm not lovable, or other people aren't capable of loving me. And I think as a parent, like, in order to show them, not only are they lovable, we tell them we love them a lot, but that I am capable of loving you in the way that you need to be loved. And a lot of that is it's attuning in to them.
Yeah. Well, the next way that I would describe this, or practical kind of takeaway, is, and you may have heard me say this in the past, but this book is just one of those must reads. Brennan Manning, Abba's Child, was written in the early 90s, but in chapter 2 of that book, there is it's on the imposter, the false self. And in the chapter 2 of that book, he says this phrase. It's kind of in passing, but it was just, to me, it's such a core component of what it means to really attune. And he said, basically, your false self, you can identify your false self by when you walk into a room. And instead of saying, basically when you walk into a room, so this whole idea of reading a room, right? When you walk into a room saying, here I am, versus walking into a room and saying, oh, there you are. And I think every single one of us have walked into a room at some capacity in our lives. And I think we do it every day at varying levels. And we're like, here I am, versus walking into a room where there's other people and you're actually, your body language, your posture, your nonverbal communication is showing up as, oh, there you are. That's attunement. And so often what ends up happening is we have so many of our own agendas that we're bringing into our household with our spouse and our kids that we're driving, here I am, see me. And I'm shouting some of us are shouting on a scale of 1 to 10 from the rooftops of going, see me, all the way to a passive aggressive version of see me. But we're not attuning when we're doing those things. And I think our ability to be able to recognize, what do I actually need when I'm walking into a room and I'm going, here I am, or my language is doing that. And there's times as a parent, you have to do that. There's times as a parent where it's kind of like I think of our ramp up Sundays. And I think, when we are getting the kids to start their chores and I'm walking into a room and I'm going, okay, as the authority of the house, guys, we're going to work together as a team, but see me right now because we are going to work together as a team, but here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. And we're going to tackle this together. We're going to have fun doing it, but go do this. Now there's moments like that. And that's different. Showing up with here I am is to get your own needs met. It's to not see other people. And that's when we show up as our false self and not our true self. I know some of you, I've been in contact with a number of you, podcast listeners who are emailing and writing in and things like that. And you're saying like time is a big component of that, like time and not having enough time and that type of thing. But I don't think that time necessarily there's a difference between quality and quantity time. And there are some days that I don't see my kids hardly at all because we pack Monday and Tuesday in particular, and Wednesday full of meetings. And it's not till the end of the day that I'm actually, maybe even sometimes dinner time, that I'm actually seeing the kids. But there's a quality to that dinner time that connects us immediately, that by asking good questions, by showing up with, oh, there you are, and attunement is remembering, just like Christy did with the Phillies game for me. It's remembering, it's an ongoing thing, right? So it might be that morning your kids leave for school and or you ask a good question. Part of this is asking great questions. And I think that's the next kind of practical point that I want to make, is being able to ask great questions when you walk into a room. You ask great questions of your kids. What are you excited about today? What are you most looking forward to? What are you worried about? What are you anxious about? Did you have a test that you had to study for? And a lot of times you're going to already know that when you're involved with your kids and what they're experiencing at school. But your ability to be able to enter into their world, your ability to be able to ask a great question, and then to be able to remember the answer, so that at dinner time that night, all you're doing is entering into their world based upon what was asked before. It's like you saw them. And a lot of these great questions, you're really getting down to, what are their strengths? What are their passions? What are their interests? What gets them excited? So that you are entering into their world about their passions and their interests, so that when you do ask a question of their interests, they know that you remembered. They know that you're taking interest in what they are interested in. And that's another great way but again, it requires you getting out of your brain and out of your inner world, getting breakfast, getting your stuff ready to go, start thinking, through your calendar and through your day, to switch and react to the person in front of you, whether it's your spouse or your kids, to receive that information. Oh, there you are. And then return to that information later on in that day.
That's so good. I think as I'm listening, what's hard for me is it's shutting off my internal dialogue so that I can tune into them, you know? And I think so often we used to talk about this transition like between work and home where, you know, Josh, when we were first married, he realized like he couldn't go from work mode to relational mode, like just like that, like flip a switch. And so he needed to go to the gym, and because we would get in these arguments where he'd come home and he was like talking to me like you would talk to a coworker, like just like real transactional and just not like relationally connected. And
You are my business partner.
yeah, true. I mean, true. But we've had to learn. And I think we actually do a pretty good job now of like being able to still, obviously we work alongside each other, but also remaining this like a married couple at the bottom where it's like foundationally we just love each other and we're a team. And then we add on to that this layer of like getting the work done.
Well, and I think we have to go to the attunement of the marriage, because there are times where we've argued about, well, it just feels like we're business partners.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of times in the marriage where that is what it is. I mean, it's just, you feel like business partners rather than lovers. And, you know,
and you do have to be careful of that. And that's why, should we talk about what's coming up?
We can, but hang on a second.
Okay.
I want to make a statement. That's why also too, like when I'm feeling disconnected from Christy, because we feel like business partners, one of the difficult parts of that is when I'm feeling disconnected as a man, and I think I don't want to speak for every man, but I think generally speaking, at least this is for me, I'm going to speak for me. I feel connected to Christy when we have sex. Like that's just the nature of marriage for me. And so, but what I tend to do is I tend to just go from 0 to 10, 0 to 100 or whatever it is. And so if I'm feeling disconnected and she's just felt like we've just been business partners, and then I walk into the kitchen and I start, you know, grabbing her in the bum or, you know, just, you know,
Thanks.
Just, she's like, get off me. Like I can't just switch, like, you know, and then of course, and then I get offended, and I'm sure we're not the only ones who've dealt with this. Maybe we are, maybe we're the only ones, but what I've had to learn how to do is attune to Christy's needs in order to get her switch to turn on as well. And in order for her to feel like, because, and I think this is common, what she feels then is like, oh, we're business partners until I want sex. And then she doesn't feel loved. She doesn't feel seen. She doesn't feel attuned to. And I have to pay attention to what she needs in order to feel seen, in order to feel loved, in order to feel like we are married, like we are husband and wife, and that we're not just business partners. And so I don't just go from 0 to 10 or 100 anymore. Every now and again, and I'll do, but I think it's become more so now she realizes that I'm doing it as a joke and not as like, oh, this is what I, because we've attuned through our communication. We've been working at this for a long time of, you know, trying to attune to one another's needs. And so that's another way, especially we've been talking a lot about kids, but now let's talk about the marriage. How do you tune into your spouse so that your spouse feels seen? And this is one of the things we talk about in the Famous at Home book. Is what we do in every couple we coach in marriage coaching is what's going on within your spouse's heart matters more than what's going on between the two of you. I have to fight for what her heart desires and what her heart needs. And if I pay attention to that, what's going on between the two of us will take care of itself. So,
and you have to see it. Like you have to actually see what's going on in me, and I have to see what's going on in you. I think so often we just wait for someone to tell us. Like I feel like I used to wait for Josh to say like, oh, it's been a hard day, or oh, I'm stressed about this. Like, and I learned he's not going to just volunteer that until it's like right at the surface. I have to inquire. And especially for some of those more complex emotions or like things that have just been going on like chronically, like long term, you get so used to them until someone actually like draws out of you and like digs into your world to draw out of you. You can't even put language to that. I mean, a lot of you have heard my story. Like when I was in the bottom rung of life in those early years as a mom, like I didn't realize how hidden I felt, how unseen I felt. I didn't realize how lonely I was and I felt left behind. But it's because I just would exist day after day without processing this with anyone. And not even Josh. Like I didn't say it out loud. And it's just one day I just blurted out. One day I just blurted out, like, why don't you ever ask me about what's on my heart? And it's like, it was the only words that I could put to how I felt. Like, I just felt like he didn't care about my heart. And it wasn't just him. It was, I mean, I didn't even care. I had abandoned myself a long time ago where I had stopped paying attention. And I think that's where we can do a beautiful job for one another and save yourselves a lot in therapy by attuning, because that's really what you need. You need a compassionate hearer of your story, like someone to actually care and to listen. There's a lot of things that can be healed simply by that. And obviously we're huge proponents of doing your own work, and that has such value. But there are a lot of things that we just heal in relationship by doing this well and not fixing it. And I think that really needs to be said too. I think so many people avoid these deep relational moments or like moments of connection because there's been a threat that carries with them of like, I have to have the right thing to say. I need to be able to fix it. I need to have like, even, you know, I have to have a great question. I have to have a great response to what they respond with. And that's just not what people actually need. They really just need to be heard. And to take so much of that pressure off of us, to just be able to attune without an expectation of like, you don't need some wise sage response. All they need is my empathetic, compassionate listen.
Well, and to that point, you know, there's a guy that I've been, you know, that I know, and he's been, it's just been really cool because he's an adult, but he has obviously his relationship with his own dad. And, you know, this multi-generational type of situation where how often, and I remember this for me with my dad, when we'd work on a project together, oh my gosh, that was the time where it was like, I would just lose my patience because I wanted to do it a certain way. My dad wanted to do it a certain way.
I could totally see that.
But, and this guy, he brought this up with me where he's having the same thing. He's like, I want to honor my dad. I lose my patience. And to your point, I just said to him, we talked about it, and so they've been working on this project together, and I asked him how it was going, and he said, you know, he's like, it's actually going really well. And he said, he's like, I'm not losing my patience as much. And he says, I'm biting my tongue at places. And I was like, and he said, and then there'll come a time where my dad will just say, hey, can you help me with this? And he said, it doesn't really matter anyway, because if I would have lost my patience, all it would have done was rupture the relationship. And he said, I'm finding that I'm just honoring my dad in that. And I said to him, I was like, are you even saying anything to each other? And he's like, no, like there's not even a lot of conversation. We're just working together. We're just in each other's presence. And there's an attunement that happens even when you're on a project together, which is why we go back to a couple weeks ago when we talked about rethinking the household and the idea that your household there's a purpose and a mission for your household. When you have a purpose and a mission together with someone that you love, you don't need to say words, because that when you carry out that mission, you're attuned. You've got each other's back. I guarantee a lot of these soldiers that we get to work with, so many of these soldiers, they work together side by side, day in and day out. They don't say a lot of words to each other. But I'll tell you what, they're more bonded than most people I know on this planet. Yeah. Because they're attuned to each other.
And I think that's the beauty of, it's just the way God made us. Like it's like in relationship, son, daughter, like that relational label puts you into this connection that is not, there's nothing you need to do. But I think with our own hurt and our own busyness and our own, I think, self-protection, we just tend to withdraw in relationships.
You know, because even God, like this, to me, this is what's awesome. I mean, you think about the God of the universe and how attuned he is to you. Just listen to this. I mean, and this is separate from the fact that every one of your tears he bottles up. Just take that thought and know that that's true. He's counted all your tears. And then to realize that he searched you and knows you. Psalm 139. He knows when you sit and when you rise. He perceives your thoughts. He discerns you're going out and you're lying down. He's familiar with not just some of your ways, all your ways. Before a word is on your tongue, he knows it completely. He hemmed you behind and before. And then David writes that this knowledge is even too lofty for me to attain. But then it goes on, and I mean, he created you from your inmost being. He knit you together in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your frame is not hidden from him. Even the hairs on your head are numbered, are counted by him. You want to talk about attunement? That is a God who deeply loves you and who's deeply attuned to you. And I think the more, as John writes, we love because he first loved us, the more that we can experience his love for us and how attuned he is to us, that genuinely is the prescription for us entering into a room without needing to say, here I am, but saying, oh, there you are. Because it's our, oh, there you are's that come from his love that build his kingdom. Because the more that I can show up in another human's life and say, oh, there you are, and a person feels seen, they pay that to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. And the next thing you know, that's how the kingdom of God expands.
And I think that's what we're doing with our own children, is it not? Like, it's like,
starts there.
And that's why, I mean, circle back to what we talked about in the beginning, like my kids' EQ. I mean, it's teaching them not only their own worth and how they were created, but also how to show that worth to another person, that empathy, that compassion, to actually see. Imagine if we had a world where our kids actually saw one another and weren't jerks and bullies and just after what they needed in life. I mean, just imagine what would happen. But the ripple effect of, I mean, there's movies that are entirely based on this concept. It's like one teacher that saw a child, one coach that saw a hurting boy,
and gave them purpose and gave them vision and showed them that there was a different way.
And I think that's just the hope that we have of this isn't just a concept. And this is, you talk about the soft skills, the soft skills are the ones that you can't teach in school. You could, I suppose, but you really need to be teaching it at home in order for it to be established. Because if mom and dad aren't practicing it, how is a child going to practice empathy and compassion for themselves? How you can teach them math and science and all those hard skills, and they're good. But in order to truly succeed in life, you have to know how to do those hard, those soft relational skills that feel harder sometimes because we've just not been taught. And yet I think this really is the stuff of life. This is the stuff that makes us.
And that's an important point in the sense of what you said there. I just want to draw it out real quickly, that if you don't have empathy and compassion for yourself, how your kid's going to learn how to do it for themselves. Yeah. And I hope that it starts there for you, that you hear us say, you don't have to be perfect to do this stuff. This isn't about perfection. This is about consistency. And because you're not going to be perfect, you're going to mess up. You're going to say things you regret. You're not going to get this stuff right all the time. But your ability to show up well in those moments that you get it wrong, John Gottman finds that you just get this safety thing right just 2 out of 5 times. That's 40% of the time. You can still get the outcomes you desire in your kids. And I think we talked about this just a few weeks ago. Christy was talking about it because of a word called repair, seeking forgiveness of your kids. But I just want to say, take that pressure off, because we don't always get it right. You're not going to always get it right. But it's consistency, not perfection, in how you show up.
That's good. And I think I just keep coming back to that place. You can't attune to someone when you have never attuned to yourself. Like that what Josh needed in that transition between work and home was really significant and important. So don't beat yourself up when you feel like, I just keep messing this up, because you've never given yourself this space to actually attune to what's going on in you. Because when that is all jagged and wounded and hurt, and just raw. Like, of course we can't step into the lives of our husbands and our children. Like, we can't see them for all the stuff in front of us. And so I pray just the compassion for yourself, and also that you would give yourself the space to attune into what is going on in your heart first. Because that's the place where you have deep wells to give to other people, but you truly cannot pour. I mean, obviously we use that phrase a lot. You cannot pour out of an empty tank, but you can't. You just can't. And I think we've layered on these levels of responsibility and expectation on us, especially as parents. Like, you cannot give what you do not have. And that's why it comes down to this as a family. Like, as if we're doing this all together, this is how things start to change.
And I want to say this too. If you have young kids at home, because I know a lot of you have young kids, if you have young kids at home, this is the season where it's the most difficult to do this. So I want to start by saying grace upon grace for each other. Like, not just giving yourself grace, but giving your spouse grace. Because you're doing it, like, listen to this podcast and then say, hey, share it with your husband or your wife, and just say, can you listen to this? Like, I think we need to do this together as a team. I need your help. Like, don't give it to your spouse saying, you're screwed up. You need some help here. Listen to this podcast. Give it to them by simply saying, hey, listen, like, I need help here. Like, I'm messed up. I am not doing this well, and I need your help. And I will give you so much grace as we do this together. Because the reality is, if you have young kids, like, we have a 2.5-year-old, and he's not speaking. I mean, he's starting to speak more, but there's times he's got words that you just can't understand. And he gets so frustrated and loses his absolute mind. And we have to discern, is he hungry? Is he sleepy? Is he frustrated because we don't understand him? Or is he genuinely being defiant? And we need to, like, step in and do something about that. And if we're not attuned ourselves to what's happening, we could treat hunger like defiance, which is that's not attunement. That's totally missing it. We could treat sleepiness like defiance. We could treat defiance like hunger, which is also missing it. It's our ability to enter into their world and know and attune to what's going on at varying seasons of your children's lives. But as parents, you've got to be on that same page together and give each other a lot of grace in that process. That's true attunement. And I'm telling you this, it consistently starts. I did not get this done well, and I still don't do it great, but I do it better the more that I'm spending time in my own discipline with Jesus, in my own time with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's where I show up differently and better when that is consistent.
It's a tuning in back to your heart, You're tuned back in, and you know the status of where you are. And I think until you know that, you're just unable to track the place of another person. Yeah.
So safety, great word for your family, words that matter, and attunement, words that matter. Make sure you tune in next week. We'll be jumping to another word that matters for your family. But before we close out, I want to remind you of the My Kids EQ Ambassador coaching program. That program, we're getting into the deep dive of a lot of what we're talking about here, and real practical ways. We'll lay the foundation, and then we'll get into the practical ways that you can do this with your kids, give you some of that curriculum as part of the program. And we can't wait to have you join. Just go to mykidseq.com. You'll find that there. And we love journeying with you guys. So I just want to end with this. If you love this podcast or it has helped you in any way, we would so encourage you to go and leave a review, because the more reviews people see, they go to reviews to know whether or not they want to listen to a podcast. And the more reviews we get, the more people will learn about it. And so we're grateful for those of you who have been following us and being family members with us for many years. And we welcome those of you listening for the first time. And before we close out, I just want to say something that I haven't said yet, but we just want to thank Life Audio. Life Audio has been the team that has been working with us and the network that we're a part of now. And so we're just so grateful for them, and want to give a shout out to them as well. So until next week, keep in mind that the greatest red carpet you will walk is through your front door.
Keep being famous at home.